Hey everyone, welcome back to the realm. I'm Gina.
I'm Rich.
I'm Rob.
I'm Amy.
I'm still Brian.
Still Brian. Still Brian. It'll never get old. What are you eating, Rich? What are you eating, Lord Finkel?
Popsicle.
A Jello pudding pop.
No.
So if he passes out in the middle of the recording,
who let Bill Cosby in here? No.
You sounded just like him for a second. I was like, am I listening to an old commercial?
They were really good.
Yeah, they were really good. Do they even sell them anymore?
Well, both were good, but the pudding pops are good. No, they don't. It's a whole thing. We looked into it recently.
No, this is one of those real fruit bar ones that they sell. That has like the actual real fruit in there. This is a coconut one, but I like the mango with the tahini on it. That's good.
Do you get the ones with no sugar added?
Like,
sometimes I do.
Yay,
because those ones are really good. Danny gets the pomegranate ones, but they don't make those with no sugar added.
Right. The strawberry is the one that they make. That's no sugar. And you really can't tell the difference.
No, you can. No, you can't.
You can tell, but they're good.
Wow. I have all the popsicles for like the grandkids, so I always like keep a case of those like plastic ones with the Kool-Aid. Well, it looks like Kool-Aid, just sugar water, and throw them in the freezer. They get frozen in 24 hours. So that's all we have here. None of the fancy stuff. Huh?
Speaking of frozen.
Oh yeah, speaking of frozen.
Nice.
That was a really great segue into the topic today. Well, I am going to turn this episode over to Rob, who's so like geniusly segued the topic of Frozen, and I'm gonna just let you run with it. The mic is yours, sir.
Thanks. Can you hear me okay? Because this thing on, I had issues with it the other day.
Hear you great.
So, the Dyatlov Pass Incident is interesting topic. It's something that I probably first heard of a couple years ago. I'll talk about it later, but there was movies that I had seen that I didn't even realize were influenced by this. And when I first seen the first video I've ever watched on it, I immediately thought of these movies. But nonetheless, that's not here or there. The Dyatlov Pass Incident happened in Russia in 1959. I'm reading some of this right now. Is going to just be directly from Wikipedia, but I'll add on other stuff that I've learned as I've researched this in a little bit more detail. So it happened in Russia in 1959 in the Ural Mountains ridge in Russia, the Soviet Union. I think they left in January. Here it's saying something about February 3rd, 1st or 2nd, but I'm pretty sure it was in January 23rd when this happened. Yep. They left on January 23rd, 1959, up for the Ural Mountains. They were experienced trekking group. A lot of times they get mentioned called tourists, and a lot of the stuff that I've read and seen.
I noticed that. That was weird.
Yeah, so the explanation was that's what the Russians call the explorer groups. They call them tourists for whatever reason. They didn't really get into that detail. There was an experienced trekking group from the Ural Polytechnical Institute led by Igor Dyatlov, who that's where the pass, Dyatlov Pass, didn't originally exist. They named it that after this incident happened. They went on a hike at the highest difficulty level at the time and had established a camp at the steep slopes of Kaiholat Sayavakal Mountain, which I'm not going to be good at these names. I am going to butcher the shit out of all these names throughout the whole thing. So if anybody wants to come in there behind me and correct me with their Russian, you guys speak it well. But I believe that is the mountain that translates to Dead Mountain. So anyways, what happened is overnight on one of their stops, something caused them to cut their way out of their tent by knives to flee the campsite, which they were inadequately dressed, and heavy snowfall, strong winds, highly sub-zero temperatures as low as -50 Fahrenheit, which comes out to be -46. There's like the math equation is like 9/5 plus 32. But when you get into the negatives, it's the same.
Yeah, it's very close in. It's only off by a few numbers.
In the negative, but when you're in the positive, it's off by like 32 degrees.
Yeah.
So nonetheless, yeah, it was like that's freaking cold. After the group's bodies were discovered, an investigation by the Soviet authorities determined that 6 of them had died from hypothermia, while the other 3 had been killed by physical trauma. It is important to know because even in watching some of the videos, some of the stuff I looked up, you'll see pictures of 10 people. Sometimes there were originally 10. After about a day into this, one of them got sick and had leg problems and went back.
Yep.
So just it gets confusing because we were watching an episode, something me and Amy were watching it, and they didn't mention it at all, but they started off with showing all 10 skiers. It's unimportant, but important at the same time. So, while the other 3 had been killed by physical trauma, the one victim had major skull damage. 2 of them had severe chest trauma, including a punctured heart by their own rib. Another had a small crack in the skull. 4 of the bodies were found in May of '59, lying in running water in a creek. 3 of them had damaged soft tissue to the head and face. 2 of the bodies had missing eyes. 1 had a missing tongue. 1 had missing eyebrows, which could have been burnt off in a campfire. Investigation concluded that, my favorite part of this, a compelling natural force had caused the deaths. Compelling force which the tourists were not able to overcome was the headline in Russia. Numerous theories had been put forward to account for the unexplained deaths, including animal attacks and avalanche, loud slab avalanche on their tent, which is also called the delayed slab avalanche, UFOs, ball lightning, catabolic winds, infrasound induced panic, conflict with local ethnic groups or future criminals. I'm really struggling. Sorry, it's because I'm stressing. A botched spy meeting with representatives of the Western Bloc military, rocket nuclear testing involvement, or some combination of these factors. Russia reopened the investigation into the incident in 2019, concluding in 2020 that an avalanche had most likely killed the survivors to likely force the survivors to leave their camp in low visibility and with the inadequate amount of clothing because they weren't dressed, ultimately dying of hypothermia. There was no panic, but they had no chance to save themselves under the circumstances. They don't believe that they panicked because there's footprints, and we'll get into it later, are side by side, like they were marching but not running, which is also interesting with the avalanche theory. So the group formed a skiing expedition across the northern Urals, the Soviet Union. According to the prosecutor Tempalova, documents found in the tent of the expedition suggest the expedition was named for the 21st Congress of Communist Party of the Soviet Union and possibly dispatched the local Komsomolny organization. Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old radio engineering student at the Ural Polytechnical Institute, was the leader of this, assembled the group of, it says of 9, but there were 10 people. Why it keeps saying that, I don't know. We know there was 10 people. It does mention one returned later because of health issues. So they brought cameras, and they did journals. They were all writing in journals. So there's heavily documented. There were several pictures were taken. There's a lot of documentation. So when they were supposed to at one point send a message signal. Yes, no, not an SOS. What do you call that thing?
Morse code?
No, what's the device called?
Telegraph.
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 They were supposed to send a telegraph message, which never came. They never reached their point. They never reached their destination, and it was February 12th. Family members started to get concerned that nobody had come back. Haven't heard from anybody. So that's when they started pressing the government and local authorities to go out there and do an investigation. So when they got out there, they didn't find anything right away. The first thing they found was the tent. The tent was collapsed. The ski sticks were standing up next to the collapsed tent. The tent was shredded. It was believed that the tent had been cut from the inside as to escape. There are pictures from when they were setting up that camp, and you can see that those tent stakes, not the stakes, the ski stakes, whatever they're called. I don't ski. Do you guys ski?
No.
I know what the technical name. They're still standing there. Which
poles, ski poles, poles. I think is it. I think it's poles.
I don't.
Yeah.
Maybe I should have did some more research on skiing before.
But it is poles.
But the poles were standing there before and after. When you see the pictures of the collapsed tent, they did some. Now we're out there on the 12th. They didn't find the 4 bodies until March. They found the first 5 bodies, and like one day they were really far from the campsite. So these guys walked a good distance in negative 40 some degree weather.
Yeah, it was like a mile.
Yeah, it was almost a mile or a few kilometers that they walked away in this weather. And when they found the first 5, it looked like that they had been going back towards the camp, and they were all significantly distance apart. They all appeared to have been died from hypothermia. Some of them did have some scrapes and stuff on their hands, on their knuckles. One of them had cuts on the armpit and bruising in the side under the armpit. They didn't find the other bodies until March, when some snow had melted. They had found a bed, which looked like not a bed, but like some flooring that they had made out of some trees and some branches, like they were trying to start a camp. They found the bodies really close to it. Those bodies had severe trauma. There was a major skull damage, a severe chest trauma on 2 of them. One of them, like I said, their chest was crushed so much that it spread and punctured their heart. Another one of them had another skull fracture. They were found in May, like I said, of 59. Did I say March? Sorry. Lying in the creek. They also had the soft tissue damage. 2 were missing eyes. One was missing a tongue. And again, they talk about the eyebrows. One of them had a chunk missing off their hand that they don't really talk about, but they know that he bit it off himself. They don't really talk about whether or not the teeth matched the wound or if they found the chunk in his mouth. But like I only seen one video that I watched talked about that. Some of the trees that they found these guys under, they had branches were broke as if they had climbed up the trees to maybe if they were lost to try and find their way back to the camp. They found pieces of clothing that may have ripped off up there. And so the real mystery is like, so how did this all happen? What happened after all the successes they were having through this adventure, all the documentation, and it comes to all the theories of what happened. So some of the theories were that there was UFO or ball lightning were involved. I also should mention too that there were some burns found on one of the guy's shins, one of the guy's hands, and I'm guessing this is partially would be the missing eyebrows. And also they found some radioactive clothing on a couple of the people. So this is part of the UFO. They felt that there was military testing. There has been evidence of military testing in that area, even around that time, but it was so far away, it shouldn't have affected it. There was nothing else that seemed to point to any military testing. The original investigator at that time of that investigation had stated that some of the trees in that area were missing branches on the top, and some of the tops of the trees had been burnt. There are an indigenous people that lived around there, the Mansi.
Mhm.
They had reported seeing lights around that night. There was some campsite, I guess it wasn't that far away from them, had said they had seen lights in the sky. I don't know if they don't know if it was military testing. They don't know that it was the ball lightning. Some are saying that that's the UFO connection. There's a picture, a famous picture where it's one of their pictures, where it shows a guy in the background. To me, it honestly looks to me like maybe they took a picture of a guy coming behind a tree after he took a shit or something, but they were referring it to as the Yeti, the Russian Yeti. That's actually what they were calling it. Let me share my screen and I will show you that picture.
Yeah.
Oh,
so they were saying this was the Russian Yeti, which may have caused the damage, and this is how they got so much blunt force trauma. This is why the tent was shredded, but like I said, it says it was cut from the inside. They never really came to the conclusion of what this is, but more than likely, it was one of the campers or one of the hikers, skiers, explorers, tourists, if you will.
Yeah, because they were saying, like, they showed some pictures of one of the things that I was watching. They showed some pictures of, the other hikers. And obviously all the photos are in black and white, but that like dark gray looking, suit kind of looks like what they were wearing.
Mhm.
So another person was like, "Oh, it's just a blurry picture of, maybe they had the because I thought, well, maybe they had the f-stop open, like for a long exposure. The person moved and, it caused a blur, but then everything else in that photo looks pretty crisp. So I don't know. It's just really weird, but I don't think it's a Yeti
I don't think it was a Yeti either. There's really nothing except for that one picture. And of all the fake Bigfoot pictures I have ever seen, that looks the least like a Bigfoot or a Yeti.
Right.
I cannot find a picture of the lights they took, the blurry lights. Here it is.
I like that even the Yeti is modest, and when it takes a shit, it goes behind the tree.
Right.
So nobody looks at it.
The Yeti shits in the woods.
Yeah. It's not like my dog. My dog will make eyes. Look right at you, eye contact.
I can't do that. Makes me crazy. So here's another picture that was one of the last few pictures. So some people believe that this is a out of focus campfire and a reflection. Other people believe that this is something falling from the sky.
Oh, please.
I'm guessing it's probably a campfire.
Oh, again, remember, so this is back in 59, right? And so we just did our last episode on the Kentucky Goblins that took place in 55. And we were saying like science fiction was like all the rave, back then.
Well, here was my question about this. This is 59, and I know that so the Roswell incident happened in the 40s, but they didn't have and we're Russian, or they're Russia, we're America. We're not really friendly. We don't have internet. We don't have cell phones.
Yeah.
So did Russia know at that time about like the Roswell incident? And that's kind of what started the UFO boom.
Well, yeah, like, because was media controlled back then? Like, I don't know.
Probably not, but how long would it take that stuff to get there? I mean, I would kind of figure, like Brian said, they probably would have had to have heard it, but at the same time, who knows what they're keeping? Because, Russia was very controlling. I don't personally think that this was a UFO incident. I personally didn't want to really jump into it that quick. I think it has anything to do with ball lightning or UFOs. I don't really like the avalanche theory. Originally they had said it was an avalanche, but there was never reports of avalanches before, and to this day, there has never been a report of an avalanche in that area. When the local authorities took it over, the KGB came in and they kind of took over the case. After some research, they closed it up. They took away from the elite investigator, told him to seal it up, and it became a top secret. Nobody had any more information. They died of hypothermia, and kind of that was it, and swamp gas and all that other BS, right?
Avalanche.
So, right. Well, so there was like the radioactive. It is believed that they probably wanted this quieted because of the radioactivity and the lights. Whether the lights were UFOs or not, they were doing military testing there. And the radioactivity, it is learned that two of the students had worked at nuclear, not
Right.
power plants, but one of the place was built missiles, and it was the third largest nuclear disaster. I don't remember the name of the place in Japan, but also, behind Chernobyl. So, I mean, he probably still had some of the clothes. Also, some of the lamps they were using had some kind of isotope in it that was radioactive that they could have gotten some radioactivity from. Some of the people that had it too, that when they found some of the bodies that, like I said, they were in their underwear, they were in socks, they left this thing barefoot. They believe that some of the people probably cut the clothes off of them. They probably passed clothes on. So more people probably had the radioactivity on there. There was like 4 when there should have only been about 2 that would have actually had it from where they were working at that time. The other part, so I mean, sure, the military wanted to quiet that up and keep that under wraps. Now, there's the other part about the KGB and the botched up spy meetup, which there was one of the guys who came on the last minute to do the exploration was 38. All the rest of these guys were college students in their early 20s, and Alexander, his name was Semyon or something, but it does say Alexander, had a lot of ties he was military. He was part of the Russian secret police. And at the time this happened, Russia would plant radioactive material in random places so the US would detect it. And it would just kind of send them on wild goose chases to get them away from other, whatever they were, silos or missiles or facilities that they were making nuclear bombs. Yes.
Yeah,
so now the thing with the winds causing them to be kind of lose their mind and become disoriented and get run out of their tents doesn't make sense. Cutting out of the tents, I watched one thing where there was a couple forensic people who looked at the pictures and said that that's not really accurate. They're looking at the pictures. Some of it looked like, I mean, cutting, you can't tell by cutting.
Right.
But the puncture, some of them looked like it was punctured in, like they were forced out. The footprints, like I said, they were side by side and they were walking. So I guess back it up to is the avalanche. Say there was an avalanche. Say this delayed slab avalanche came down and it fell onto the tent. Now, if 4 of them got the blunt trauma and one of them punctured their heart, how did they just like walk away? One body that was found with the punctured heart from the rib was like one of the furthest ones. It was one of the 4 bodies in the creek. It would have taken an hour to walk that distance with a punctured heart. So why did they cut their way out? If they were crushed so that heavy, how did they dig out? How come only 4 of them had the damage? If they found the footprints, they found ski tracks, how come they didn't find any evidence of an avalanche? So now they talked about where they were in the creek, they were found under 10 feet of snow. So maybe that snow slid down and it would have been much heavier and that crashed on them and that's where they got the actual trauma. Some of the other autopsy reports state that one of the guys has damages on his neck that's like strangulation. One of the blows to the head that one of the guys had was more like they got the blow to the head when they would have been in an upright position, not laying down or up against something. They said that because they were found in the creek, that's probably explains why the eyes were missing, the soft tissue, and the tongue. But the tongue is a much more solid muscle, right? It's not a muscle. Is it a muscle? But either way, they found blood in that person's stomach, which would almost indicate it was cut out.
Interesting.
Right. So only one of these shows that I watched about this talk about the Manseys, which are the indigenous people in that area. So the reports were that they're pretty easygoing and they get along with people. But at one point in the 30s, the Russians put in a town somewhere over there to kind of force these people into public schools and into more of a Russian way of life. And they weren't happy about it because they made their spiritual beliefs, their indigenous people spiritual beliefs, illegal. And in that area, they had several prayer stations and holy areas there. There's the belief that they may have disrupted it. And the actual point that the end of the expedition was at one of these sites. So there was the possibility that these guys were not, the Mansi were not happy with these guys going up there, coming through. They possibly desecrated something. They had carved out in some trees, like some signs. They had written some stuff in their language. And one of them, I see in their head scratched in there 1959, which I'm wondering if that expedition team did that. And that could have been another reason to, vandalism, basically, right? So they interviewed, of course, they were the first suspects because they're the only people around, even though they're like 50 kilometers away. They talked to one guy, and he had stated about all these sacred places up around the area and where they were going and prayer stations. And they talked to his brother like 2 days later, and he's like, "No, there's nothing like that around here. We don't have any of that stuff. It's illegal." So, did they have anything to do with it? Did they force them out of the tents? Did they march them out somewhere? But they're still sporadic. They're still died of hypothermia, and the other ones, had the trauma way down the way. Nobody's ever really reported having any other issues, but I did want to mention this, that in the 30s, there was some retaliation by the Mansi to the Russians, and there's even video out there of basically a slaughter where the Russian soldiers are taking guns off of their bodies in one of their villages. So,
oh wow,
yeah. So I mean, there probably is resentment for a long time, and they're not seeing a lot of people. But it also was brought up that there is the Khanty. The Khanty is another group of people that don't live in that area. They move around. They're like nomads, but they were described as being savages. They don't get along with Russians. They don't get along with the Mansis. And they believe that there was a few, at least 5, somewhere in that area at the time this happened. So these are some of the theories. I don't believe the Yeti. I don't really think it's UFO. Was it a botched military thing? I mean, that's what I said. I see the footprints in their marching. Were they forced to be marched by Mansi, or were they forced to march by some military, that KGB, something that went wrong? I don't know how I feel about the avalanche, because just no evidence of an avalanche, but still being able to find footprints. Yet at the same time, when we get over by the river, we have the blunt force trauma that would indicate another avalanche, as they were under 10 feet of snow. I need somebody to interject a little bit now. What you think?
Oh, if you're ready for comments, I'm ready to make
because I feel like I'm starting to talk in circles, and you guys make me nervous. And
oh gosh,
a lot. And I'm waiting for Brian, because I know Brian's got something.
Well, because I think I don't know if you found your boyfriend's episode or not, but I was trying to find.
Did, but it wasn't available on HBO Max.
Oh, I was trying to find my picture that because I think you and Rob would fight over Josh Gates because apparently Rob had a bromance with Josh Gates as well. But I had a
back
photo.
Off. Cat fight.
Hey, I'm going to win this fight because Josh Gates held up a photo to me that said happy birthday, and it got texted to me on my birthday some years back because my friend is familiar with him and his family. So I got y'all beat because he's my boyfriend. But having said that, I'll throw my two
These are all just theories. None of this is official yet.
What is it? What's official?
Are we talking about
that he's your boyfriend?
He is. He is hands down. It's not a theory. That is fact. I will get the picture and I will post it.
I wonder what Kez would say about that.
I don't think Kez would care because I mean they watch me fall in love with Twilight like 4 or 5 times a year. God. Amy, what did you say?
I said I thought Edward was your boyfriend.
He is. That's what I was saying. I mean, I have Edward Cullen. I have Josh Gates.
They're like two opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah. One is a make-believe, sparkly vampire in a shitty movie, and the other is a real-life Indiana Jones.
Watch that filthy whore mouth of yours.
No, that's what a real vampire would say, not this crap that they did in Twilight. He's angsty.
He's angsty.
He's a vampire, but he chooses to go to high school. That's so fucking stupid. That's so dumb.
Hey, the younger they start out in an area, the longer they can stay. There's an explanation for that. But anyway, I digress.
Listen, if Peter was going to high school, we all would have been laughing in what they do in the shadows. If Peter wouldn't do it, it's not real vampire shit in my book now. Team Peter.
Whatever. We can argue about this another time because we are talking about the Russians here.
Yes.
So,
does anybody have a theory?
Touch
on is one of these theories.
I don't really have a theory as to what happened because some of these theories have some meat to it, like some interesting meat to it. But the Yeti for sure I could throw out there. As far as the aliens and UFOs. About 2 weeks, the research I had done, the part of the people that were in the search party, a couple of them being friends of the people that were on there.
One was the guy that seen that light was best friends with Igor.
Yeah, he said that like two weeks after this happened, like when they were searching, he had seen unexplained lights in the sky as well, and those were documented.
In the trees far away, but still that could be the military testing.
Yeah, it could be the military testing. So as far as the lights, like you said, the Mansi people, they had talked about seeing lights in that area. I find it interesting that the Mansi, the indigenous people live in that climate. It's crazy that's just where they call home. I couldn't do it. But the interesting thing about that whole theory with the Mansi tribe was that, and one of the things that I had watched was, and a couple of things I read had said that they thought that the hikers had maybe stolen an object from a shrine or, disturbed it, and that the Mansi people were going to go seek, they're going to make them pay for it and punish them. And so they ended up, a shaman made it to the campsite and poisoned their drink or their food or something somehow. And it caused them to hallucinate, which caused them to kind of be in a frenzy and leave in that manner. Like in a hallucinated, like in a hallucinated state. But like you said, the footprints that they were able to recover, didn't show anything scattered. I find it interesting that there wasn't a lot of snow, which takes you to the avalanche theory of the campsite was visible to people, to searchers when they got to the area. Like you said, the ski poles were still sitting in an upright position that matched some of the last photos they had taken of the campsite. So those looked undisturbed. So if there was an avalanche, where'd that go? And then I thought, okay, well, did they think they heard an avalanche and thought they had to start running for their life? And that's how they made it
run.
So they said that the footprint cadence, and then take it over to the footprint cadence, like of them being marched out, were there more footprints there that could be accounted for then? Because they're only talking about the footprints of the people that were in the tent and not saying like that there were extra footprints there that couldn't be accounted for. So I found that interesting. The
10
government
people walk single file to conceal their numbers.
Oh, that's
Sorry.
true. Maybe they
Yeah.
like
That's
walked
true.
in each
Snow
other's
people might do it
footprints.
too.
Snow people. The snow people. That's good.
Maybe they walked in each other's footprints. I don't know.
Well, that's interesting because at one point when they were camping, in their diary, they talk about how they came across footprints of a hunter that wasn't following the same trail they were, and as the snow was, it was snowing bad at that time. They followed and walked in his footprints.
Oh, yeah. Well, maybe that.
I mean,
They
that's
watch
also,
Star Wars too.
that's also a technique soldiers will use. You walk in the footprints of other people.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well,
the
yeah,
sand,
and
the sand people knew that.
Yep.
and you're talking about these people are like experienced tourists, as they called them, experienced hikers. One of the guys, I think his name was Rustum, his dad was interviewed as having said like he can't believe that his son would have perished
Because he
in
was so
such
athletic.
conditions. Yeah, because he was really athletic, he was very experienced.
Did you
Like
watch the same show I watched?
probably it was at the Unknown Compelling Force by Liam LeGuillou.
Yeah, I don't know if that was it, but it was.
Well, a lot of the
I
material
sent
was
you.
like,
I sent you a
yeah, it was the same one then. The link that you sent me was the same one because I'd seen
yeah, that was a
it.
good one. I watched
Yeah.
it.
So
I
it's called
watched
The
it.
Unknown Compelling Force. And that's basically what they had, the records had shut. Which I'll get to that in a second. What are some other notes that I made here? So
But
yeah,
see,
so
with the toxology reports from the autopsy, don't they bring up the drugged out, hallucinated
mhm.
theory, but there's nothing that shows there was even alcohol. And I guess with the avalanche too, even if you want to say like, oh well, the snow melted. Um, why did they walk away, and why did they walk so far and then decide to walk back? Because they believe that some of the bodies were in a position that they felt they were coming back. But I mean, they
Yeah.
had walked a long way
Yeah.
in
And
sub-zero weather with no shoes on.
And it was interesting because one of them still had the camera around their neck. The other one, another guy was found with a notebook in his hand that was empty. Nothing was written in it. And
And
so I just
his
like there was
camera and notebook was missing.
yeah, and the other thing is like, so when they started thinking about what happened and all these rumors and stories started to fly, whenever they were able to kind of negate the testing of weapons because they couldn't find any debris, they couldn't find any wounds that would be consistent with like shrapnel or anything else, then they started thinking about nuclear weapons. And so they started worrying that the bodies had radiation because then they found a couple people that had higher than normal radiation levels coming off of them. So then the helicopter pilots were refusing to transport those bodies back in for an autopsy unless they were put in a zinc covered or encapsulated, like a zinc covered
Container. It was
container, yeah, as to take them back because they were afraid that was going, because then they had the injuries with the eyes out and the tongue out, and so that it could all play into like some sort of contaminated waste or something that was maybe in the stream or the waters. I don't know what happened. The fact that none of these people had really any clothes on. Some of them, I mean, they had clothes on. Some were dressed very like scantily, and some were all the way up to had a lot of their gear on, but nobody had shoes on or gloves.
And it was believed that some of them that had less clothes on, they found cut up clothes. So people some of the party was like removing clothes off the dead to wear. And it's also believed that when the bite mark, which I only seen in one other thing that I watched, talked about like, well, maybe the person was just biting to see how numb they were, which doesn't make sense. but the burns, they believe that it looked like they had the same last name. I'm not going to even pretend like I can pronounce it, but they had the same last name. Were together. It looked like they were trying to start a fire, and maybe that they were so numb they were close to the fire and they actually burned themselves without knowing they were burning themselves because they were so cold.
Yeah.
The injuries are like consistent enough for a nuclear bomb or any other kind of explosion.
Yeah, I think just at the end of the day, the theory that like kind of resonates with me the most could potentially be the military US spy kind of meetup type thing that they were talking about, just simply because what I find interesting is that Thibodeau guy that asked to join the expedition like 2 or 3 weeks before they
Yeah, the
left.
38-year-old. Yep.
It was not anybody, they didn't know him. Supposedly he was going because he was already a tour guide, a tourist guide that took people on these guides, and that he was trying to get like his master level certification, and he had one more expedition to do, and this was going to be like a long enough expedition to qualify him for those points or whatever he
However they
needed.
did it.
And but I just find it interesting, like nobody really knew him, so like did he use that expedition to get there for another reason, like as a cover up? I don't know. That's the one I find, because I find it interesting that the government's like, you know what? We said it was an avalanche. We said it could be this. They died of hypothermia. We're not going to say anything else. We are now just going to close it saying unknown compelling force for them to have left their tent in the condition that they did. And now case closed. Boom. So that's what I find interesting. That's my 2 cents. I turn it over to whoever would like to comment next.
Brian, say something.
Well, I thought Rich was going next. I thought we go in order.
I don't know. My first thought was when I was watching it, I'm with you guys. Aliens are out. Sasquatch or Yeti's out. Usually when these things happen like this, it's the simplest explanation is probably really what happened. And sometimes there's too much noise around it that start leading people in different directions. But there's parts of this. There's parts of the story that don't add up individually. It's almost like parts of every story is maybe the real story. That there might have been a combination of factors that may be closely related to all of these theories that happened. Because like you said, the avalanche thing, I could theoretically okay, but then you have the discrepancies. Like Rob said, how did they walk an hour away and then have all the injuries they had? An avalanche isn't going to rip your eyes out and cut your tongue out. Okay, so you got to say, even if the avalanche caused them to get up, or as Rob said, maybe they thought they heard something out there like an avalanche and they thought they needed to go. Whatever that was, maybe led them to something else, that maybe they came across some type of Russian military experiment going on, and then they got caught up in that, and then it went from there. Maybe there's a combination of those things. That I kind of go down that path from watching the things I watched, that I think it's probably a combination of things that happened, and ultimately I believe it was probably some type of military thing gone wrong. And remember, the Russians are good at deception. Okay, so all those stories and everything from 1959 on, they just kept covering up. They're not. What are they going to gain by telling the truth? They don't care. So they already started with what their story was, and that's what they're going to stick with. So that's what I think.
We've all seen Red Dawn. Like, we're just going to start believing the Soviets now when they come out and they
right, because they don't want to get that information out. Of course not, especially during the Cold War in that time.
Right.
Well, like you said, Rob, who knows what they were doing? Like, they would plant nuclear or whatever. They'd plant that stuff so the United States or allies were misdirected. They were good at doing that stuff. So, even back then, so.
Yeah, they were good at shenanigans.
Yeah, so
they were never really good at following through with stuff. That's why they lost. But they were good at like shenanigans. Like, oh, we will build space shuttle. It will be great. And then they didn't. Well, they did. But that's a whole thing. That's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, and their supersonic jet that was like the Concorde that didn't last either. So
yeah,
I mean, but regardless, that's a different topic. We're off topic here.
Amy,
for this story, that's what I'm going with. So,
Amy, what did you think?
Well, I mean, I really liked the avalanche story. To me, it made a lot of sense. But then as everybody kind of started debunking it, I felt like, well, yeah, that's true. And you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of gaps there. So I really started thinking that, maybe it is, I mean, the Russians probably didn't report half of what was true, right? Like they could be hiding a total, like huge amount of facts to this, misleading everybody. But, they were marched out of there. They were missing their eyes and tongue. That could have been an animal eating their tongue and eyes.
And
but
animals live in negative 40-degree weather.
Humans do.
What do?
The indigenous people did that there. So
well, the Mansi people hunted. I thought of that.
Right. Did you say penguins?
Who, me?
No, I said the Massey. Is that their name? They lived there, so stands to reason that
they had
wildlife.
furs, so they had it. There was animals.
Yeah.
And they got to eat.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just think that a lot of it is put there probably falsely to make you think that it was this big mystery, and it was probably just as easy as those two guys that worked at the the radiation place or whatever. Where was that? It was
one was building missiles, and the other one I'm not really sure what it had to do with radiation, but there was radioactive materials there.
I mean, they could have been marched out of there and not had a chance to put clothes on, and started dropping dead as they were trying to be led away, and maybe left in as an example. Like, you don't know what these guys did before they even went on this adventure.
Yeah,
I just feel like there's a lot of misinformation that was probably put out there to confuse everybody. I blame the Russians.
Mm-hmm.
So that's do we have any listeners in Russia?
Yes, actually.
Yeah.
We actually do have somebody in Russia that listens.
Okay.
KGB. I don't know.
Gina, when you go back through and cut this, Gina, here, I'm gonna give you this. Soviets, take that and just put it every time somebody says Russians, so that way all of our Russian friends don't think that we're besmirching them. It was the Soviets.
Perfect. Perfect. But make sure it's in like a Homer Simpson voice.
The Soviet Union, like that, like the one guy.
Yes.
I don't know. Is that the So, anyways, I kind of agree with Rich. The skeptic in me asks questions like, if the Massey people weren't there and there wasn't a Russian military goings-ons anywhere near there, what would we be saying?
Yeah.
Like, what would the reasons for this be if those two factors weren't there? But because those are there, you can incorporate them in to fill in the gaps of whatever we don't know. And in this situation, because it is so odd that a lot of things don't seem to add up, so we try to fill in those blanks with logical things that make sense to us, because we don't know what would happen if there was a partial avalanche that hit their tent or that they heard coming, and if other people were already outside of the tent and they get hit by a different part of it near the lake, that all of that snow, if it's near water, I don't know how snow reacts to that. I don't know if there would be less snow when they're discovered if they got hit with part of an avalanche. Like there's questions, and because nobody was there to be able to answer them, your mind just wants to fill it in with lots of things like, oh, they couldn't have gone that far with a punctured heart. We don't know how punctured their heart was, and we don't know how far that person could have gotten like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like saying somebody had a broken femur.
Punctured the heart. It's not a minor injury.
But how punctured was it?
It was just a minor puncture. It's the heart.
But did the puncture happen after the cause of death?
We don't know that.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Is that
we don't know that for sure. But
right.
I do want to say, just with the avalanche thing, is just that why did they walk away in single file? And why did they go that far before they turned around?
Maybe they thought if they went single file, then they'd have a better trail to follow to go back up. So, like, they would pack down enough of a trail that they'd be able to see, kind of like leaving breadcrumbs,
Mm-hmm.
you
And
know?
maybe they turned around to go back because they were disoriented from it and they didn't know which way they were going.
Yeah.
I just think it's weird they would have walked away from it. So I did see something that did say that they had supplies stashed up along a tree line. And they believe that they were going for those supplies, but I only seen one thing that talked about that, which was interesting. And another thing was that um, it was in the show that me and Gina watched, is that they launched their investigation. Was it on February 6th? So they weren't even considered missing yet. They weren't even they didn't even start looking for them.
You know what?
Josh Gates found that. That was on his episode where they found a note or something.
After, at the very end of the episode,
Yeah.
They found that the investigation started, and in some of the reports that were released when they reopened the investigation in 2019, there was also another thing that was dated March, but also had February dates on it. But it was one report.
Yeah, somebody tried to say it was a clerical error where they knew that the interview had happened in March, but somebody accidentally put February on there. So I don't know.
Right. That's more of the fuel to the conspiracy fire.
Oh, absolutely.
I guess another question is what would be the point if this was malicious by the Soviets or the military? Like what's the benefit?
So if the theory was that they were out there because one of them was involved with the nuclear or with the bomb building facility, and the other guy that came in at the last minute was involved with secret police and had been in the military, Russian military, for years. They were actually got involved, not the whole expedition, but a couple individuals to plant nuclear material, and that it is a thing that Russia did, because the U.S. would pick that up and they would investigate that. So now they're in the middle of nowhere investigating this when they're making a missile silo over here.
Right.
So that's the possibility. So there was supposed to be an exchange, and there was supposed to be photographs. They were supposed to meet up with some spies, give them the radioactive material, and take pictures of the spy. That's a theory. Because
this is Spies Like Us now.
Right. So maybe that's what I'm saying. So maybe it was that meetup went wrong.
But and then that's what got all the people killed.
Yes. No witnesses, right? No bodies, no evidence.
But to me, again, all of that sounds great for a Bond novel, but the biting of the hand, the burning on the hands, all of that seems to me, as a layperson, what do I know? But it seems to make sense. I could totally see biting your hand because you feel numb and just biting right through your hand if you can't feel it, or putting your hands right over a flame. But that would indicate that they were out there and something had happened in order to put them in that situation, which could have been something environmental that had happened, or it's a combination of a lot of things. Maybe there was some weather event, and maybe the indigenous people did get a little payback for something, or maybe the Soviets were, testing some sort of a weapon, and that's what happened. All of that could be, but I'm still pretty skeptical and think that it's just one of those crazy circumstances where it was probably just multiple things that went wrong. Sometimes that happens. I know the example I always like to use, and this is a little out there even for us because it's normal, is
out there is normal for us. It's
out
true.
there, yeah. Well, so several years ago, there was an incident at Disney World on one of the monorail stations where a monorail was backing in when one was trying to leave. It was a big accident. It was horrible. But you go through and you say, how could that possibly have happened? Where's all the fail safes that if there's two monorails on the track at the same time, one wouldn't be able to get into the station if one is still there? Then you start going through the incident and what happened, and you find out that the initial sensor that was supposed to stop that, it didn't work for some reason. Then it went to the person who was physically there monitoring it, missed one went by the sensor. And then it gets into, there's a mechanical problem. But it's just this cascade of things where it's like all of the things that should have prevented this just didn't happen. And it's just a horrible accident. And the best you can do is learn from all of those to make sure that you have better redundancy in place. But sometimes there's just a horrible series of events that lead to crazy circumstances and outcomes. And I think this is one of those. We're never going to know the actual answers to what happened, but I don't think it's aliens. I don't think it's Russian Bigfoot taking a shit behind a tree. I don't think that it was some retribution like a shit, what's his name? Danny, who's the guy that we like from Inglourious Bastards? The bear Jew.
And bring me a Pepsi.
Yeah. And what about that meatloaf?
Make me a sandwich.
Fuck, I wonder what she's doing. I never know what she's doing back there. I gotcha.
I just think
it's not like an Eli Roth movie where you have some indigenous people taking revenge. Now, could it have been the Soviets that somehow were testing something that caused an avalanche that had other implications? Were they using some psionic device that drove them crazy in their noodles and they went running out of the tent? Maybe. Soviets were doing some crazy shit. But I don't think that it's anything wilder than that. I think it's probably way simpler than we're thinking.
It just whatever happened, they walked calmly by those footprints. We're not running.
Yeah. Why would you do that?
To me, is like,
well, how deep was the
happened? Snow? Whatever it was, why would you get out half naked and calmly walk out of the snow for like a half a mile?
Right.
I mean,
well,
that's the biggest part of it. So to me, whatever.
That's what leads me to something that Rich said is sometimes the best answer, or sometimes the actual answer, is the easiest thing. And so just like in closing, I would say that I picked one of the scenarios that I think was most plausible. But at the end of the day, what I really think about, and even this leaves holes and gaps, is that when you're in extreme temperatures, maybe something happened, like you said, fail safe. Maybe they didn't expect, maybe a storm came in, maybe temperatures dropped even colder than what they expected. You can start to hallucinate when you get hypothermic. People actually start removing their clothes when they're hypothermic because they feel hot instead of cold. And so they start to strip down. This has happened in many other cases where people have died of hypothermia in the middle of snowstorms and stuff, and they're found without clothes and shoes on because they're delusional from the hypothermia. So, but a mass delusional hypothermic event, like the fact that they all did it, maybe or maybe it started with a couple people, and the people that were doing much better tried to go off after these people because these people took off because they were, like in this hypothermic delusional state. So the people that were faring better went to go look for them, and they got lost. Maybe snow came in. There's lots of things. Why
didn't they go look for them with clothes on?
Well, but that's what I'm saying. Like, how do we know that they weren't already clothed? Because they didn't really talk about a lot of clothes left over at the campsite. They didn't talk about finding any shoes. So did people, as they were going on, start taking off their clothes, and it got buried by other snow? By the time they got there could be plenty of snow drifts that could have covered that stuff up.
They did find a lot of their clothes in the tent.
Okay.
Yes, they talk about Brian? Being under the blankets, that they found a lot of their clothes.
Oh, gotcha.
But my other theory was that possibly it was the Frankenstein's monster. I'm still living up in the northern mountains. Quite possible. I seen this movie, Frankenstein Theory, a few years before I seen anything on this incident, and it's the first thing I thought of was that movie because it's very similar. Of course, it's found footage horror, and these people go out looking for the Frankenstein monster. But it's very similar, except for
Yeah.
it's all the Frankenstein monster. It's not a shitting in the woods Yeti or Russians or UFOs or anything.
Do you recommend that movie, Rob?
I really like the movie. I think it was a really good story because this guy finds the letters from the beginning of the book Frankenstein in his like great great grandma's trunk in an attic somewhere, saying that these letters were real, they were authentic, they just changed the names, and the story of Frankenstein was true, and that there was some kind of sightings of a lone guy who was a giant out in the woods in this area, but they didn't go to Russia. It would have been good if they would have showed the monster more, but they never really show the monster, and I think that's what really.
Yeah, that's some Blair Witch shit.
Yeah, that really didn't get. I wish they would have showed it more, but I liked it. But I don't know.
We'll have to do that on one of our movies.
But there was a movie I also had seen, which I don't even really remember it, but now I'm going to go back and watch another found footage movie called The Devil's Pass, which is based on this.
Yes, I did see that. I did see that come up when I was doing some research. So that looked, I would like to watch that. Well, I would just be interested. Well, first of all, go ahead. Sorry.
In the interest of Stranger Things 5 coming out soon, and in the midst of our rewatch, I have a new theory for this story, and this is what I'm sticking with. This will be my final word, is that the Soviets were probably just starting their MK Ultra bullshit like we were, trying to get something going. The 38-year-old guy who had KGB ties and secret police, he was bringing the stuff. Like, he had all the candy. They called him the Candy Man. And one night, he gives everybody the LSD or whatever he has. Everybody freaks the fuck out, and they die of exposure and hypothermia because they were taking whatever. And they know the toxicology, and there wasn't anything there. Well, yeah, they're not going to say that if they know that their man on the inside was the one providing these things.
So, how did the man on the inside end up dying?
You're never supposed to get high on your
somebody
own
else's drink. So he accidentally picked up somebody else's drink, licked his fingers after he put it in.
I think
everybody was there.
Oh.
You have to take this in your vodka. It's going to be delicious.
He dies.
But no, I think the 38-year-old guy did it too. This is my story. This is what he did.
It's like, I'm getting high too, bro.
Yeah, right.
A party.
And maybe they had been doing it before, and this time
they did too much.
Real.
They did. Let's make it a double tonight, guys.
Yeah.
And then,
my theory makes just as much sense as all the other ones.
Oh yeah, I like it actually.
It would explain the craziness that they did.
We would love to hear from listeners as to what they think happened and if they had heard of this before. I had not heard of this till you brought it up, Rob. So not in the past, not ever. I had not heard of this. So we've done a couple episodes recently now of things that are new to me. So I love this. So would love to hear what listeners say, and would love to have listeners send us some topics of some interesting, lesser talked about things. But again, there are some movies, TV, a couple documentaries, TV show, and a book that was written about this. And there's another author working on something now. So we'll put links to all that in the show notes. So Rob, thank you so much for bringing all this to us and all the hard research that you did. And until next time, everybody, stay weird. Thanks. Ciao.
Oh my God, lad.